Welcome to the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today is Sara Tilly, lead technical writer at Infobip. Welcome, Sara, to the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, and thank you for having me. I'm actually really excited and a bit nervous, but actually really happy to be joining this podcast.
No problem at all, Sara. So let's try to get a little bit more comfortable for you. So just tell us, how did you initially got into documentation? What was your triggering point? And just explain a little bit more about yourself, please.
Okay, well, actually, I started with marketing, and then I slowly got into technical writing. I actually got an opportunity to be a technical writer 5 years ago. And I started as a technical writer in a software development firm. And I managed user documentation for server monitoring and SharePoint administration tool. And then after that, I managed documentation and technical content in a SaaS company in travel industry. And at the same time, I also worked as a freelance technical writer. And then after a few years, I landed this job at Infobip. So that's how I got started. It was actually spontaneous, but it was fun.
Fantastic. So what's your documentation process at Infobip, and which teams do you normally involve in it?
So basically the most important thing that we have is our process. And it's always a good thing to have the process in place, especially because user documentation and documentation in general is such an integral part of software development. And we as technical writers are here to help product development. And in most firms, technical writers or the documentation team, we create client-facing guides and user documentation. And we sit between product development on one side and marketing on the other. And depending on the company and their needs, technical writers work with multiple departments and teams. So in our case, we work with product development, meaning we work with the product managers. We also work with the pre-sales team. We work with client solution engineers and with the marketing department. So that means product marketing managers. And I think that technical writers have an important role to play as, being technical writers as well as writing user-friendly documentation. And having that process, when you align with product development and you align with their roadmaps and their release management, I think to have that process well sorted out is the key.
Mm-hmm. Super. So how do you manage your documentation workflow then?
How do we manage it? Well, basically, the most important thing, as I've said, is the process. So we know exactly who writes the documentation, when and how. Basically, it starts with us sitting down with subject matter experts and outlining the document. So, for example, if we know that we have a release that's going to come up, we know the exact date, and then we sit like 2 weeks or maybe even 3 weeks before that, and we sit with the product managers to discuss and to outline, or at least to create a draft. And then the technical writers go in and we play with the product, we test it, and we try, using those steps that we made, we try to recreate a certain task. So if we can follow our own steps, then okay, we see our problem here and we need to patch that and we need to fix it. So the thing is that we have enough time to play with new features before they go out. So we have enough time to make a guide. And after that, the documentation is reviewed by our team. Then after that, it's always approved beforehand by the product manager. And then later on, you have the proofreading before we go online. And after release, it's always a best practice to sit down with, for example, a product manager or a developer team and discuss what we could have done better, maybe tweak the documentation a bit better. Also, what I like to do is I like to consult our support team and ping them, for example, if they notice any Zendesk tickets, for example, for a specific feature or for a specific product, and find out maybe if we can explain our guide a bit better or shorten the steps or add something. And the idea is that the documentation is a living organism. And the goal is that the documentation should always be up to date, as well as it should be to the point, and it should be quality, so we try to tweak as many things as we go along and to ask as much feedback as we can.
That's really good, Sara. So especially I like the way you have a full end-to-end process and the postmortem of what went wrong and sitting with the support team. So there's lots of things you do. So what are the important factors you consider when creating documentation?
I think the key is to know who are you writing for. Because if you don't know who you're writing for, if you don't know your target audience, then you have a problem. Then it's really difficult to write anything if you don't know who will read it. For example, it's really difficult to write when you don't know like whether the documentation you write is read by your client or a visitor or a layman or a highly skilled or qualified tech person, or maybe just a tech savvy marketing person. So depending on who you're writing for, you're either going to use jargon or you're not. So for example, if I know that I'm writing for a tech savvy marketing person, I may use the jargon, but I will also put in the brackets an explanation of what this term means. Or actually what we like to do is also link to our glossary. So in our glossary, we have a lot of terms explained in layman's terms. And also depending on who you're writing for, like you will know how to structure your documentation in a more digestible way. So you can also tweak your tone of voice and your style, and as well as the length of a certain guide. And also what I think is important when creating a documentation is to research and to communicate and to rely on subject matter experts to give them, to receive feedback and to ask them questions and to actually be a bit a pain in the ass, if I may say, but the idea is to communicate and to learn and to research and to dig deep into what our product can do and what it does and how to explain that in a very digestible manner. Especially, I mean, I like to say that I digress, but I read a few years back that technical writers usually transferred engineerish into plain language. And I think that this is really important. Like on one side, technical writers need to get what our product does and to really have a in-depth knowledge of what it can do and how does it work, but also to translate that into plain language. So anyone can set up, a service or a different product. And
Fantastic.
Also, I think it's important to for technical writers to test and to tinker with the product and to play around. So I think that's also a learning curve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, you're doing all the hard work, but at the end of the day, you're trying to bring a good working document to your product.
Yeah, but basically, I don't like to call it hard work. It is a lot of work, but it's not hard because technical writers, in my opinion, are usually inquisitive and we're really curious. So I think that we like to learn new things and we like to find bugs and we like to test things and we like to figure out how things work. And I think that's like half of the fun.
True, true. So have you seen any kind of reduction in workload since introducing such high quality documentation?
Yes, I think, and again, I have to mention the processes. So if you have the processes aligned and in sync throughout the company, I think that you then have more time to spend on thinking how you can structure different guides in a better way, or how to manage your entire knowledge base a bit better. In technical writing, like as we all know, there's little actual writing, and I think it's more of a thing of research, learning, and assembling data, and as well as finding new ways of serving technical data and guides to our clients. And so I think that quality documentation doesn't come naturally. It just takes time for all of us to figure out what works for our clients and what they find works best. And it's a process. And if you have a process, like when it comes to a roadmap and release management, and you have a process of how different teams work together to align with the company goals and to align with marketing campaigns and all of that, I think that then the entire process for technical writers becomes easier, because then we have more time to actually write and to think, okay, how can we make this better? How can we make our knowledge base bigger, better, more quality? And so in my opinion, I think the lack of processes generally leads to people running all over the place and not having enough time to actually focus on writing and focus on making a knowledge base better.
Yeah, true, very true. So how do you report on your documentation, and who do you report to?
Again, this depends on how different firms have their processes set up. It actually basically boils down to the fact, like, what do you want to do and achieve, and what do you want to measure? Like that way you can set up sort of like a funnel. Like if someone lands on your homepage, where do they want, where do you want them to go? What do you want them to do? And if you have that set up, I think that the goal should be to help users figure out how to use a product with ease and without having to ping the support team. Of course, you then have new users or visitors who are actually just browsing your product. And in that case, we usually go with, okay, so the idea is to showcase our product in a way that it's maybe easy to set it up. So if someone is new and comes to see our product docs, okay, they will probably want to know, how can I set up this product or a service in my environment? And then the idea is to see, okay, you have a great docs knowledge base. Okay, so this is not going to be a problem. I'm not going to have to ping the support team and ask all sorts of questions on how to get started, for example. And I also think that it's really hard to measure technical writing, actually to quantify it, because the content is not your typical marketing blog posts. And also what's important that, for example, people are more prone to giving negative feedback. So you're going to see that on the metrics as well. Also, so for example, you have this amazing knowledge base and you have a product that it's really like the entire knowledge base is set up to showcase how a different product is easy to use, right? And no one is going to give you credit for it. For example, a client isn't going to write you a special report saying, "Oh, this is amazing." No, they're usually going to use the guide and move on. No one is going to come back and give you feedback unless you ask. So what we usually do is we ask our clients and we ping the support team to ask, okay, so what are people having trouble with? What can we do better? And it's all about measuring all this feedback and getting a big picture of what we can change and what we can do better. And in our case, we report to the marketing team, but we also report to the product development team, So we have a lot of things that we work with. And depending on what we want to achieve, we report to different teams because we need their help to achieve our goals. Also, I think that tracking metrics in Google or maybe even leads in Salesforce, like all of that comes to a bottom line where, okay, so you have this data, let's see how we can make it better. But that data isn't necessarily the main thing that you should look for, like numbers. They are an important part, but they are not the main thing that you should be measuring. Like you need to have the process and you need to have the funnel set up according to your needs and according to your goals.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, very nice. So one thing I did not ask is the Infobip documentation. Is it a publicly available one, or does your users need to sign in to access the content?
No, it's public.
It's fantastic. So in that case, do you know if any?
Can see it. Sorry.
Super. So do you know if any organic search traffic is being generated from your knowledge base?
Yes, and that is, for example, one of our big goals. A lot of our traffic comes directly, but it's also organic as well.
All right, super. So I think we are almost to the rapid fire round questions, Sara. So who have you learned the most about documentation from in your career?
Experience, definitely. And different forums, Google. I actually listen to at least one podcast a day. And before that, I used to read a lot. And I still read a lot. And I actually read anything that I can get my hands on. That means different blogs, for example, Medium, forums, including Reddit, and different podcasts or technical writing and marketing blogs. My big source of knowledge is Tom Johnson. He has this amazing I'd Rather Be Writing blog, which I read on a daily basis. And that's my go-to knowledge when I want to know more. And I also read and follow the Write the Docs, iHeart Technical Writing blog, the Manuscript podcast. Like there's a bunch of things that I follow and I try to read them and listen to them on a daily basis.
Fantastic. So it looks like you read a lot of resources. So can you share some names of your recently consumed documentation related resource?
Well, recently I've been up to developer relations. I had this amazing book that I'm reading on. And also I discovered a new podcast. Well, it's not actually new. It's new for me. It's called the UI Breakfast, the UI and UX design and product strategy. And I've been going over some of them older maybe episodes of technical writing. So I'm trying to catch up.
Super. That's nice. So let's go to the next question. What is the one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
Oh boy. Well, I will have to go with don't be afraid of things you don't know yet. Because technical writing, depending on the firm you work Therefore, there's always going to be things that you don't know. And I think that's really normal. You're not a developer. You're not going to know all of it. But the idea is to get to know the product, to get to know the people who work on the product, and to learn and to research and to read a lot, as much as you can. And I think that the whole point of being a technical writer is actually learning. And that leads to a different approach when you write, because you're not afraid to say, okay, guys, I don't know about this, but can you teach me? And that exact phrase led me to a lot of great projects.
Nice. Thank you, Sara. So I think we are almost to the end of the session. Anything more to add to our audience before we say bye to them?
Well, I would like to say thank you for inviting me. And the message that I would like to send out is never be afraid to learn more and to do your research.
All right. Good. That's nice. So once again, it's a pleasure to have you today, Sara, with us in this podcast series. And I wish you all the good luck for all your future projects, and take care.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.